She saved up for a car for 6 years. But her younger sister deliberately crashed it, then said, "Mom and Dad will make you forgive her anyway." They didn't expect her to go all the way this time. Subscribe and write where you're watching this video from. Aisha's world was built on quiet sacrifices. While others, her age, posted selfies in front of brunch plates or passport stamps, Aisha counted coins and jam jars and clocked into double shifts. She was the kind of woman who made lists for her lists, who checked sales circulars before buying a carton of milk, who quietly sidestepped every impulse in favor of the bigger picture. That picture, a crimson 2024 Toyota sedan with leather seats, a sunroof, and not a single mile clocked in, had lived only in her dreams for years. But dreams don't pay down payments. Hard work did. She had started saving the year she turned 20, with a part-time job at a local cafe and a full-time course load. Back then, her classmates took out loans to travel, spent freely on electronics or new clothes, and laughed at the idea of saving for something as boring as a car. Aisha didn't laugh. She walked. She took the earliest buses and the longest routes to work and school, pouring every extra dollar, tip money, holiday bonuses, even birthday cash, into a growing, sacred fund she kept separate from everything else. Her friends drifted, her phone stayed outdated, but her vision never wavered. Now, at 27, she stood in the fluorescent-lit dealership, pen in hand, listening to the rhythmic tapping of keys as the final paperwork printed out. The salesman's voice faded into background noise as she reached out and touched the hood of the car. Her car. It was all hers. Every inch of the metallic red shimmer, every corner of the pristine black interior, every pixel of the dashboard display. None of it borrowed, none of it gifted, and certainly none of it stolen. She had earned this. She inhaled the scent of new leather and plastic, a scent more intoxicating than any perfume. When the salesman handed her the keys, she didn't squeal or jump. She simply smiled, quietly and fully, as if holding the sun in her hand. Pride settled in her chest like warm cement, heavy, solid, unshakable. She slid into the driver's seat and adjusted the mirrors like a ritual. The car started with a soft hum. As she pulled out of the lot, she resisted the urge to cry. It wasn't just a car. It was proof that she mattered, that her efforts meant something. The drive home was smooth, almost surreal. She avoided potholes with reverence, drove 5 miles under the limit, and parked at a careful angle in front of her parents' house, where she was still living while saving for her next goal, a place of her own. She sat in the car for a full minute before stepping out. The setting sun caught the shine of the hood, and for a moment, she imagined herself in a different life, one where she was celebrated for her achievements, one where the people she loved most truly saw her. Her mother opened the front door before she reached it, wiping her hands on a kitchen towel. "You're late," she said, peering at her with that familiar look, equal parts disapproval and distraction. Her father stood behind her, sipping tea from the same mug he'd used since Aisha was a child. "I wanted to show you something," Aisha said, her voice light. They followed her to the driveway, her mother's expression neutral, her father squinting. "New car?" he asked. "Yes, just picked it up." "Well," her mother said, adjusting her glasses, "I suppose it's about time. That old thing you've been driving looked like it was about to fall apart." Aisha nodded. She didn't expect balloons or applause, but some part of her had hoped for more than tepid commentary. Still, she smiled. It wasn't about them. It never had been. Then Tamira appeared, leaning against the garage wall with one foot crossed over the other and her phone in hand, Aisha's younger sister watched the scene unfold with a lazy, feline smirk. Dressed in designer athleisure, nails freshly done, and not a care in the world, Tamira exhaled loudly as she straightened and sauntered over to the car. She didn't say anything right away, just circled the vehicle like a cat assessing territory. "Nice ride," she finally muttered, peeking through the driver's window. "What's the mileage?" "Less than 100, Aisha replied coolly. Tamira let out a low whistle, nodding with mock appreciation. "Damn, you really went all out." Aisha stayed quiet. Tamira turned, her gaze sharp. "Let me take it for a spin." "No," Aisha said instantly, her tone firm but calm. Tamira blinked, momentarily surprised. Then she laughed. "Come on, girl, don't be stingy. Just around the block." "No," Aisha repeated. "I just got it. You're not driving it." Tamira rolled her eyes with exaggerated dramatics. "Lord, you act like I asked to borrow your kidney." "It's not up for debate," Aisha said. "This isn't something I'm willing to share." The words hung in the air like smoke. For a moment, Tamira stared at her, the corners of her lips twitching, and then she gave a little shrug and stepped back. But there was something in her eyes, an amused, calculating gleam that put Aisha on edge. She knew that look. She'd seen it for years, usually moments before Tamira broke something and expected someone else to clean it up. Dinner that night passed with quiet tension. Their parents talked about their church fundraiser, about the weather, about nothing at all. Tamira didn't mention the car again, and Aisha didn't bring it up either. She kept the keys on her at all times and parked a little further down the block, away from temptation. She trusted no one. Still, unease lingered. The following days passed in a blur of errands and work, but the glow of ownership remained. Even the exhaustion from her 2 jobs felt lighter now. She had done something for herself, finally. Each morning, she passed her car in the driveway. She felt that same burst of joy. She would rest her hand on the hood like she was greeting an old friend, open the door gently, drive with focus and care. It wasn't just a car. It was a physical manifestation of her tenacity. But under that joy was a thin layer of anxiety she couldn't shake. Tamira had barely commented on the car since their initial interaction, which for her was strange. She thrived on attention, on poking at boundaries until something broke. Her silence was not peace, it was plotting. One night, after a late shift, Aisha came home exhausted. She set her bag down on the entryway table and dropped her keys beside it for what was supposed to be a minute. Just a minute to go upstairs, change out of her uniform, and splash water on her face. When she came back down, the keys were gone. Her breath caught. She sprinted to the door and yanked it open. The driveway was empty. Her car, her beautiful, earned, beloved car, was gone. The world around her went silent. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She picked up her phone and dialed. Voicemail again. Voicemail again. Still nothing. 2 hours later, her phone finally rang, but it wasn't Tamira. "Mr. Anderson," the voice said, deep and even. "This is Officer Reynolds with the County Police Department. I'm calling about a vehicle registered in your name." Aisha's knees buckled. "There's been an accident," the officer continued. "The driver is unharmed, but the vehicle sustained significant damage. The driver identified herself as Tamira Anderson." She didn't remember leaving the house. One moment she was clutching her phone, the next she was standing behind flashing blue lights, staring at twisted metal and cracked glass. And there was Tamira, standing next to the wreckage, arms crossed, expression bored. Aisha walked toward her with a storm in her chest. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Her silence said enough. Tamira glanced at her, shrugged, and said, "That sucks. But hey, don't freak out. Mom and Dad'll make you forgive me." Aisha's world tilted, not because of the car, but because of the smirk on her sister's face, the audacity, the ease, the certainty that she'd face no real consequences. In that moment, something ancient cracked inside Aisha, something that had been stretched too thin for too long. She didn't speak. Not then. Not in the car on the way back. Not even when her mother opened the front door with a tired sigh and said, "We need to talk about all this anger, Aisha." Aisha simply nodded and began planning. This time there would be no forgiveness, only consequences. The following morning, Aisha sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the floor with a blank expression. The sunlight bled through the half-drawn blinds, illuminating dust particles in the air, but she felt none of its warmth. Sleep had visited her only in fragments, short, agitated bursts interrupted by the crashing image of twisted metal and the echo of Tamira's flippant voice. "That sucks. Don't freak out. Mom and Dad'll make you forgive me." Aisha's heart had pounded against her ribs all night, not just from the pain of what had been done, but from what it represented. It wasn't only about the car. It was about years of quietly being pushed aside, expected to understand, to endure, to forgive, to be the mature one. It was about watching her sister float through life on cushions Aisha had never been offered. It was about being invisible unless there was something to be expected of her. She descended the stairs slowly, knowing what was waiting on the other side. Her mother was in the kitchen, back turned, frying something in a pan with exaggerated movements. Her father sat at the table, sipping coffee with that worn, distant look he wore whenever tension brewed. And Tamira? She sat slouched in the breakfast nook, scrolling her phone like nothing had happened. "And you want me to forgive her because she's my sister?" Her mother's voice hardened. "We're not asking you to forgive her. We're asking you to move forward. Family is more important than things." That was the mantra. Always. Family over feelings. Family over fairness. Family over justice. Aisha stood without a word and walked upstairs. She needed air again. Her phone buzzed when she reached her room. A text from Tamira. "Stop being dramatic. It's just a car. Mom and Dad said they'll handle it. Don't make this a thing." A thing. Aisha sank onto her bed and stared at the screen, letting the words etch into her bones. Her sister wasn't sorry. Her parents weren't sorry. She was the only one grieving, the only one expected to swallow her pride in the name of keeping the family intact. But for the first time in her life, Aisha didn't feel like preserving it. The cracks had become too wide, the silence too loud, and her sister's smirk too unforgettable. She stood, walked to her desk, and pulled open the drawer that held her insurance documents. There were rules for situations like this, guidelines, systems, consequences. Tamira had never met one she couldn't slip past, but Aisha was going to change that. Not tomorrow, not eventually, now. The silence in the house the next morning was dense, unnatural. Aisha could feel it pressing against her skin like the humidity before a summer storm. The air hung with something unspoken, something raw. Her parents moved quietly through the kitchen, carefully polite in the way people become when they know they've gone too far but aren't ready to apologize. Tamira was nowhere to be seen, but Aisha could hear the faint sound of her voice upstairs, talking on the phone, laughing. Aisha had stayed up most of the night reviewing her insurance documents, reading policy terms she never expected to need, highlighting phrases like unauthorized use and liable party. She hadn't yet decided what she was going to do, but the wheels had begun to turn. There was power in the knowledge that, for once, the rules were on her side. Still, she moved through the morning with deliberate calm. She packed her work bag, ate a quiet breakfast, and nodded along as her mother asked if she'd be home for dinner. Aisha said she wasn't sure. Her father tried to lighten the mood with a comment about the weather, but she offered only a thin smile before walking out the front door. Her shift at the clinic was a blur. Charts, phone calls, patients. Everyone and everything wanted something from her. But her thoughts kept circling the same drain. Tamira didn't regret what she'd done. She wasn't sorry, and she never would be, unless she was made to be. When Aisha got home that evening, her car's absence in the driveway still felt like a fresh wound. She had parked her replacement, the battered old Toyota she used in college, further down the block. It wasn't out of paranoia, not entirely. It was distance, emotional and physical. Tamira greeted her at the door with that same irritating ease, barefoot and sipping a smoothie, as if the last few days had been nothing but a mild disagreement. Her nails were freshly done again, long and bright pink. "You look tired," she said with mock concern. "Still sulking about your car?" Aisha ignored her and walked past, setting her things down with controlled precision. She had nothing to say to someone who treated destruction like a joke. She went upstairs, closed her door, and turned on some music to drown out her sister's existence. Later that night, Aisha fell asleep earlier than usual. Her body was drained. Emotionally, she was a tangle of frayed wires, and sleep offered the only escape. But sometime around midnight, a distant sound stirred her, a faint, hollow chime. Keys. It took her a moment to register the noise, and when she did, she jolted upright. She hadn't touched her keys. She kept them in her purse now, which was in the corner of her room. Except they weren't. The purse was tipped sideways. The keys were gone. Panic and fury fused in her chest as she rushed to the window. She caught only a glimpse, a red flash at the edge of the street, headlights sweeping into the dark, the roar of an engine rising in pitch. Her breath caught. It wasn't possible. But it was. Tamira had taken her backup car. The realization knocked the breath out of her. This wasn't miscommunication or an accident. It was theft. Deliberate, willful, cold. Aisha's hands trembled as she reached for her phone. She dialed, straight to voicemail. Again. Still nothing. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She sat on the edge of her bed and stared at the wall, stunned by how far her sister was willing to go just to prove she could. To remind Aisha that her boundaries meant nothing in a house that had never respected them. The hours crawled by in painful slowness. Her parents didn't seem to notice anything unusual. When Aisha finally came downstairs at dawn, they were sipping coffee and discussing grocery lists. Neither of them had seen Tamira leave. Neither seemed concerned that she hadn't returned. "She's probably with friends," her father said when Aisha asked. "Don't be dramatic," her mother added. "You girls are too old for these games." Aisha didn't reply. She knew better now than to expect concern. It wasn't until nearly noon that the call came. This time it was a number she didn't recognize. "Miss Anderson?" the voice on the other end asked. "Yes. This is Officer Delgado from the city precinct. We have your vehicle. There's been an incident." Aisha's heart plummeted. "What happened?" The driver, identified as Tamira Anderson, ran a red light. There was a collision. "No injuries, thankfully, but your car has sustained significant damage. We need you to come down and confirm ownership." She didn't remember hanging up. She didn't remember the ride to the station. She only remembered standing there, numb, as an officer led her to the lot behind the precinct where her car now sat, or what was left of it. The front end was crushed, the bumper barely attached, the windshield spider-webbed with cracks. Tamira stood off to the side, arms crossed, wearing a bored expression and an oversized hoodie. She glanced up as Aisha approached but didn't say a word. Aisha didn't move for a long time. She just stared at the wreckage. Her backup car wasn't pretty, but it had been hers. It had survived college, grad school, snowstorms, and sleepless nights. It was a symbol of resilience. And now it was ruined, like the one before it. And still, Tamira said nothing. Not sorry, not even surprised. When they got home later that day, their parents finally reacted, but not in the way Aisha had hoped. "I just don't understand what's going on with you two," her mother said, pacing the kitchen. "Tamira, you need to think about your choices," her father added, though his tone lacked conviction. Tamira just shrugged, pulled a soda from the fridge, and plopped down on the couch. "I get it, okay? It was dumb, but it's not the end of the world." Aisha stood in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes burning. "You stole from me. Again." Tamira took a sip of her drink and said, "You left your keys out. That's not stealing. You went into my room. You've gone in mine before. Not to take something and wreck it." "You're so dramatic," Tamira muttered, tossing her head back. Aisha turned to her parents. "And you're just going to let this happen again?" Her mother held up a hand. "We're tired, Aisha. We're not picking sides." Aisha laughed, low, bitter, humorless. "You picked sides years ago." She turned on her heel and walked out, her vision blurred by fury. She didn't slam the door. She didn't scream. She simply left. That evening, Aisha sat at a cafe downtown, staring at her insurance claim on the screen. The cursor blinked expectantly. She had everything she needed: police reports, witness statements, and now a second incident. It wasn't just about getting reimbursed. It was about making sure Tamira couldn't keep doing this. She clicked next and kept going, her hands steady, her heart resolved. She was done being the forgiving sister, done being the quiet one, done being taken for granted. The storm had begun, and this time, Tamira was going to feel every drop. Aisha's fingers hovered over the keyboard, the glow of her laptop screen illuminating her face in the dim light of her bedroom. The cursor blinked steadily, waiting, urging, daring her to press forward. The insurance portal was open to the final page. Submit claim. Her claim had been filled in meticulously, backed by supporting documents, police reports, photographs, and 2 separate incident numbers, all pointing to one conclusion: unauthorized use. Her sister had not only disrespected her boundaries but had done so deliberately, recklessly, and with complete disregard for consequence. She stared at the word submit like it was a doorway she wasn't sure she could step through. Because beyond that button wasn't just paperwork or reimbursement. It was a line drawn in cement. It was a declaration that she was done playing the role she'd been assigned her whole life. The reasonable one. The peacekeeper. The one who let it go. Her phone buzzed on the desk. A message. Tamira again. "You should really let this go. I told you I didn't mean to crash it. You acting like this is pathetic." Aisha read the text without reaction. Then, with one slow breath, she clicked submit. For the first time in weeks, she felt still. Not calm, not relieved, but still. Like the moment before a storm reaches the shore, when the sky goes silent and the air thickens with electricity. The next morning, the house was unusually quiet. Aisha descended the stairs with her bag over her shoulder, her expression unreadable. She hadn't told anyone what she'd done. Not yet. But it was only a matter of time. She knew how this story would unfold. First confusion, then outrage, then manipulation. Tamira was in the living room curled on the couch under a blanket, watching some reality show on mute while tapping idly through social media. She didn't look up as Aisha passed. She hadn't even flinched after totaling a second car. The arrogance of it pulsed like a second heartbeat. Their mother was at the kitchen table with a steaming mug of tea, her eyes scanning a newspaper she pretended to read. Her father stood at the counter, slicing fruit with slow precision, as though the blade might distract him from the tension thickening in the air. Aisha poured herself coffee and sat. She didn't speak, didn't offer updates, didn't ask how anyone slept. She just sipped her coffee while waiting for the dominoes to start falling. And they did. At precisely 4:47 p.m., her phone rang. Not the usual ringtone. This was the one she'd set for official calls. Her insurance agent's voice was crisp, polite, businesslike. He confirmed receipt of the claim and informed her that based on the documentation she provided, full liability for both accidents would be transferred to the driver of the vehicle, Tamira Anderson. All damages would be charged under her name. Because the vehicles were not reported stolen but had been used without consent, the situation met the criteria for unauthorized operation, not grand theft, and thus remained a civil liability. Aisha thanked him and ended the call. By the time dinner was ready, she had already printed the finalized documents. She tucked them into a thick envelope and placed them beside her plate at the dining table. No fanfare, no warnings. The meal was typical: roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans. Her mother served with quiet authority, her father said grace with his usual detached reverence. Tamira strolled in late, hair still damp from a shower, phone in hand. She didn't glance at Aisha as she slid into her seat, her smirk already forming. "So," Tamira drawled, poking at her food, "are we done being dramatic, or are you still pouting?" Aisha didn't respond. She placed her napkin in her lap, lifted her fork, and ate slowly, calmly. Their father cleared his throat after a few moments. "Girls, it's time we moved on from all this. Mistakes were made, yes, but we're a family. We don't hold on to bitterness." Asha chewed and swallowed before speaking. "Some mistakes cost $35,000. Her father sighed. "That's not helpful." Tamira rolled her eyes. "Here we go again." Their mother put her fork down. "Aisha, this is not who you are. You've always been so level-headed, so mature. This anger isn't like you." Aisha reached for the envelope, lifted it, and set it gently in front of Tamira's plate. "What's that?" her sister asked, barely looking up. "Read it," Aisha said. Tamira scoffed but took the envelope anyway. She tore it open lazily, still chewing, and unfolded the first page. As her eyes scanned the document, her chewing slowed. Her smirk began to falter. The silence around the table grew colder. Her fingers gripped the edges of the papers tighter as she flipped through them. Her mouth opened, then closed again. Her eyes widened slightly, just enough for Aisha to notice. "What is this?" she finally asked, her voice thinner. "The finalized insurance claim," Aisha said, her tone even. "All liability is yours now." Tamira blinked. You actually did it?" "Yes." "You're not serious." "I'm very serious." Her mother reached for the papers with a frown, scanning the first page. Her father leaned over to look. "This can't be right," he said. "They're saying she owes. This must be a mistake." It's not, Aisha said. Everything's been reviewed twice. Her mother looked up, her voice low. Aisha, this isn't right. This is your sister. No, Aisha replied. This is the woman who stole from me twice and never once said sorry. This is the woman you raised to believe consequences don't apply to her. Tamira stood abruptly, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. Her face was red now, her jaw tight. This is insane, she hissed. You're ruining my life over a damn car? No, Asha said calmly. I'm finally protecting mine. Her father stood too, hands flat on the table. Asha, this will follow her for years. Her credit, her employment. You're talking about financial ruin. Aisha nodded. I know. Then how can you do this? Because, for once, Aisha said, standing slowly, I'm choosing myself. Tamira's hands trembled around the papers. You're just bitter, jealous even. Of what? Aisha asked. Your laziness? Your entitlement? Your complete inability to function without someone cleaning up after you? Her sister's face twisted with rage. You're heartless. No, Aisha replied. I'm tired. Their mother's voice cracked as she spoke again, trying to soften the room with maternal reason. We can work this out. This doesn't have to go through insurance. We can handle this in the FA. Miley. It already did, Aisha said, and you already chose who to protect. The conversation spiraled. Her father called her ungrateful. Her mother said she was being vindictive. Tamira accused her of betrayal, but Aisha stayed silent through most of it, her gaze steady, her voice rare and precise. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She didn't ask them to understand. She didn't need them to. After the meal, she packed an overnight bag, not out of spite, out of peace. She needed distance. As she left the house, she passed her old bedroom window. Tamira stood inside, watching her, arms crossed, hatred etched across her face. Aisha didn't stop. She didn't wave. She didn't look back. The road ahead wasn't lit with resolution, but it was hers. And for the first time, that was enough. The morning after Aisha left the house, she stood alone on the sidewalk outside her friend Corinne's apartment, her small duffel bag hanging off one shoulder. She hadn't told anyone she was coming, not even Corinne, but the soft knock she gave on the door was answered within minutes. Corinne blinked at her in a bathrobe, her hair pulled into a lazy bun, a coffee mug in one hand. Aisha? She asked, her voice still hoarse with sleep. I didn't know where else to go, Aisha replied, forcing a small smile. Corinne stepped aside without a word and let her in. That was the kind of friendship they had. No questions, no explanations needed. Just presence. Aisha stayed in Corinne's spare room for 3 days. She didn't cry. She didn't rant. She simply existed in the quiet, answering work emails and going through the motions of her job. But inside, she was sharpening something. The silence wasn't numbness. It was focus. She was calculating now, not from rage, but from necessity. Tamira had violated not just trust, but something more intimate, her autonomy. And their parents had proven, beyond any doubt, that they would always choose the easier child, the louder voice, the prettier smile. On the second night, she received an email from the insurance adjuster. The claim had officially been finalized. The damages totaled $36,452. The payment responsibility had been transferred fully. There would be no impact to Aisha's credit, no financial burden. It was done. She read the number 3 times, let it sit in her mind like a stone at the bottom of a well. Then she closed her laptop and went to sleep, the corners of her lips twitching at the edge of something unfamiliar. Not joy, not satisfaction, something colder, something earned. It didn't take long for the message to reach her family. By the fourth day, her phone began buzzing constantly. Missed calls from her father, texts from her mother, one-word messages from Tamira that ranged from seriously to you better fix this. Aisha ignored them all. Then came the voicemail, one from her father that she listened to out of morbid curiosity. His voice was steady, but she could hear the strain behind it. He pleaded for her to call back, to think about what this is doing to your sister. He talked about family, about consequences, about how Tamira was not equipped to handle something like this. Asha almost laughed. She wasn't equipped? That had always been the excuse. Tamira wasn't ready. Tamira was still learning. Tamira didn't mean it. And who had to clean it all up? Not anymore. By the fifth day, Tamira showed up in person. It was early afternoon and Asha had just returned from the grocery store. Corinne was still at work. She was juggling bags in both arms when she heard the loud knocking. Sharp, urgent. She froze for a moment, then walked cautiously to the door. Through the peephole, she saw her sister, arms crossed, chin high, eyes wild with indignation. She opened the door slowly, letting it creak on its hinges, and stood in the doorway without a greeting. "You need to fix this," Tamira said immediately, her tone clipped and full of venom. "I just got off the phone with my bank. My credit score dropped 50 points overnight. 50. Aisha leaned her shoulder against the doorframe. That tends to happen when you cause $36,000 in damages. Tamira stepped forward, but Aisha didn't move. She wasn't letting her inside. "Are you seriously okay with ruining my life over a stupid car?" Aisha tilted her head. "You mean the one you wrecked? Twice? It wasn't on purpose. The first time, maybe not. The second time, you went into my room. You took my keys. You deliberately ignored everything I said. It was a mistake." "No," Aisha said. "It was a decision." Tamira's hands clenched at her sides, her breath coming faster. "You don't get it. This could cost me my job. I had a promotion on the line, Aisha, a real one. They're reconsidering it now because of my financial record. Do you know how humiliating that is?" "I imagine it's less humiliating than standing in front of your totaled car while your sister smirks at you," Aisha said evenly. "You seemed fine with that." Tamira's voice cracked. "I was scared, okay? I didn't know how to tell you. I thought you'd calm down. I thought—" "You thought Mom and Dad would protect you again, and they tried, but they couldn't this time." Tamira stared at her, eyes burning with something ugly. "You really hate me that much?" Aisha shook her head slowly. "No. I just finally loved myself enough to stop letting you walk all over me." For the first time, Tamira was silent. Not defeated, not apologetic, but silent. Aisha watched as her sister's mask cracked, not with guilt, but with fear. The real kind. The kind that comes when someone who's never been told no finally hears it. "I can't pay it," Tamira whispered, her voice almost childlike. "What am I supposed to do?" "Figure it out," Aisha said. She closed the door. Behind it, she exhaled. She hadn't known if she could do that, but now she had. She could hear Tamira standing on the porch for several seconds, then the sound of footsteps descending the stairs and fading away. That night, Corinne came home to find Aisha curled on the couch, watching a cooking show with the volume low. She plopped beside her and opened a beer, handing Aisha one without asking. "I saw your sister storming off when I pulled up. What happened?" Asha sipped her drink. "She's learning what accountability feels like. Must be a shock." "It is, for everyone." The next morning, Asha got a call from her old boss at the clinic. A better position had opened at their uptown branch. More hours, better pay, more flexibility. They wanted her to consider transferring. She said yes without hesitation. Later that afternoon, she packed her things at Corinne's and returned home, not out of forgiveness, but closure. She walked through the front door to find her mother and father sitting in the living room. Her mother stood as soon as she saw her. "Aisha, please." "No," Aisha said, dropping her bag by the stairs. "We're not having that conversation again. It's over." Her father rose. "We can help cover it. Just tell the insurance." "I won't lie for her," Aisha said, her voice like stone. "She did this, not me, and I'm done protecting people who don't protect me." Her mother's eyes welled with tears. "But we're family." "Exactly," Aisha said, "and for once the family's going to learn what that actually means." She walked past them up the stairs into her room. It felt different now, smaller, tighter, but hers. She closed the door behind her and sat at her desk, opening her laptop again. Her new job paperwork waited in her inbox. As she began typing, her phone buzzed. A new text from Tamira. "You'll regret this." She stared at the screen for a full minute, then deleted the message and blocked the number. Regret was a luxury she no longer entertained, not when clarity had finally arrived. The days that followed unfolded like a slow, inevitable landslide. It didn't happen all at once. There was no explosion, no violent collapse. Just a quiet shift, piece by piece, as Tamira's carefully cushioned world began to erode, and Aisha, for the first time in her life, didn't lift a finger to stop it. The first ripple came on a Tuesday morning, just after dawn. Aisha was sitting on the front porch with a mug of tea in her hands, enjoying the silence before the neighborhood stirred. She had never been a morning person until recently, but now she found solace in the early hour, before anyone could reach her, before phones started ringing and doors started slamming. She sipped slowly, the steam curling around her face as she watched the sun climb. Inside the house, her father was already awake, sitting at the dining table with a calculator and a stack of papers. Her mother stood behind him, silent, arms crossed, staring at the numbers with tight lips. Aisha didn't need to go inside to know what they were talking about. She'd heard them the night before, whispering in their bedroom. Discussions about refinancing, about dipping into retirement savings, about liquidating the small investment account they'd always promised would go toward future family travel. It stung to know they were considering bailing Tamira out again, but for the first time they were doing it with resistance in their voices, with consequence hanging in the air. Even they were beginning to see that this mess was not just a mistake, it was a pattern. And it was expensive. Later that same day, Aisha watched as Tamira stormed through the front door, her voice already raised before she even reached the living room. "This is getting out of control," she shouted, slamming her bag onto the couch. "They froze my card. My account is locked. I tried to use my debit at lunch and it declined in front of everyone." Their mother rushed in, concerned. "Did you talk to the bank?" "Yes, I talked to the bank. They said my overdraft protection is suspended because of a flagged liability. The claim's showing on my record already. Do you know how that makes me look?" My manager saw the notice. She pulled me aside and asked if I was in financial trouble. "Financial trouble? Do you know how humiliating that is?" Her voice cracked at the last sentence, and for a moment Aisha almost saw the child in her, panicked, confused, desperately trying to maintain control of a situation that was rapidly slipping through her fingers. But then the mask returned and the rage followed. She turned to Aisha, who had just entered the room silently, arms folded. Their eyes locked. "This is your fault," Tamira hissed. "You did this. You wanted to see me suffer." "I wanted to see you learn," Aisha replied coolly. "There's a difference." "You're so smug," Tamira snapped. "You think this makes you better than me?" "No," Aisha said, her voice firm, "but it makes me free." Their parents stood frozen, caught in the middle, too afraid to interfere, too complicit to escape it. For days after that, Tamira's unraveling continued. Aisha witnessed it not with satisfaction, but with sobering clarity. It began with the credit agencies calling the house. Then came the panicked letters from her bank. She had stopped opening them after the third envelope, stuffing them into drawers like that would make them disappear. Then her job started to change. Subtle at first, fewer responsibilities, emails that used to come directly to her, now looping in others. Then came the meeting with HR. Aisha didn't hear the details, but she knew something was said. Tamira returned home that night with red-rimmed eyes and trembling hands. She didn't speak. She went straight to her room and closed the door. That weekend, Aisha was in the kitchen when she overheard Tamira's voice through the wall. It was muffled, but angry, escalating. "I don't have that kind of money, Marcus. I told you already. I didn't lie to you, I just didn't think it would matter. It's not like I'm getting sued. It's just insurance. Yes, I know, but no, don't hang up. Marcus. Marcus!" A door slammed moments later, followed by silence. Aisha didn't move. She had always known Tamira's relationships were shallow, transactional, but watching them fracture under pressure was another matter entirely. This wasn't a social bump. This was a reckoning. People who had once found her charm irresistible were beginning to see what Aisha had known for years. Charm fades when the bill arrives. On Sunday, their parents held a meeting at the kitchen table. Not formally, but the kind where they both sat down at once, weary and rigid, inviting Aisha and Tamira to join with their eyes alone. "We need to talk," their mother said. Tamira sat with her arms crossed, her expression pinched and hostile. Their father cleared his throat, glancing at Aisha, then back at the paper in front of him. "We can't pay this off for you, Tamira, not entirely." "What?" Tamira snapped. "Are you serious?" "We've run the numbers," he continued, "and we could maybe cover 10,000, but that's it. We'd have to dip into retirement savings just to do that." "You said you would help me," Tamira said, her voice rising. "We said we would try," their mother corrected. "But you have to understand, this isn't just your mess. It's ours too. We've spent years cushioning you from the world, and we can't keep doing it." Aisha didn't speak. She just watched. For the first time, her parents were confronting the cost of their protection, not just financially, emotionally. Tamira's behavior had always been their blind spot, their burden to deflect. But now the weight was too heavy to shift without breaking something. "You should be blaming her," Tamira said suddenly, pointing across the table. "She could have stopped this. She did it to punish me." "I did it," Aisha said evenly, "because you never once apologized. Not for the car, not for stealing, not for laughing in my face. You acted like it was nothing." Tamira stared at her, something sharp and dangerous in her eyes. "You don't know what it's like to be me. You've always been the quiet one, the favorite." Aisha laughed, softly, bitterly. "The favorite? Really? That's what you believe?" "You're the one they brag about," Tamira said, her voice trembling. "The hard-working one, the example. I've spent my whole life trying to live up to that." "You've spent your life avoiding responsibility," Aisha said. "And now that it's caught up to you, You're looking for someone else to carry it. But not this time." Their mother closed her eyes, her face drawn with grief. "Enough, both of you." But the words felt hollow. There was no fixing this, no simple reset. What had broken between them was deeper than a car, deeper than insurance. It was the realization that love without accountability was just indulgence. And indulgence, like credit, always came with interest. That night, Tamira didn't come home. She returned the next morning looking ragged, her hair undone, her clothes wrinkled, her eyes haunted. "I think Marcus is done," she said to no one in particular. "And I just got a call from the leasing office. My apartment application was denied." Aisha looked up from her coffee. "They check financial history now." Tamira didn't reply. She just walked upstairs. Days passed like a procession of quiet reckonings, letters, phone calls, awkward silences. Their parents grew more reserved, speaking less, retreating into themselves. Aisha stayed focused, on her job, on her routines, on her peace. But sometimes at night, she sat by the window with a blanket over her lap and stared out at the street, wondering if this was what justice felt like. Not triumphant, not cruel, just real. Because sometimes justice wasn't loud. It was quiet, unforgiven, and earned. The days following Tamira's unraveling became quieter, not in the peaceful way Asha had always longed for, but in the way silence settles in a room where something important has died. There were no more slammed doors, no high-pitched demands from the kitchen, no desperate calls from their parents echoing through the house. The drama had burned through its loudest phase, leaving behind the ash of what once was a carefully maintained illusion, that this family had balance, that there was equality between sisters, that love was given freely and fairly. Now that illusion was shattered. Aisha moved through the house like someone visiting a museum of memories. She no longer flinched when passing her parents in the hallway, no longer avoided the breakfast table in the morning. She simply existed, calm and controlled, her spine straighter, her steps more measured. Every day, she left for work at the uptown branch of the clinic where she had recently transferred. New office, new responsibilities, better pay, and a sense of recognition she had never experienced at the old location. Her co-workers respected her without expecting her to overextend herself. Her supervisor consulted her on schedules, asked for her opinion during meetings. She was no longer the background figure keeping things afloat. She was seen. That first paycheck after the transfer felt like more than just income. It was validation. One Saturday morning, Aisha sat at the small desk in her bedroom, organizing bills and updating her budget spreadsheet. The numbers felt less suffocating now, the pressure less crushing. Even with 2 destroyed cars behind her finances had survived intact. She could start saving again. Not just for another vehicle, though that would come, but for her own place, a space without inherited silence, without obligation. She heard footsteps outside her door and paused, waiting to see if they would pass, but instead a knock. Soft, hesitant. It was her father. He stood in the doorway, not stepping inside, not with the authority he once carried. His shoulders were slightly hunched, his eyes tired. "Do you have a moment?" Aisha nodded. He entered slowly and sat in the chair across from her desk. For a long time, he said nothing. Then, finally, he exhaled, "I owe you an apology." She blinked, unsure whether she'd heard him correctly. "I've spent years telling myself that I was being fair," he continued, not meeting her eyes, "that treating your sister differently was about her personality, her struggles, that you could handle more because you were stronger. I told myself that meant I respected you, But what I really did was leave you alone." Aisha felt something shift in her chest. Not forgiveness, not yet, but something like the beginning of release. Her father rubbed the back of his neck. "I let her believe that nothing she did was serious. And I let you believe that no matter how much you gave, it was never enough to be acknowledged. That was wrong." Aisha folded her hands on the desk. "Why now?" He looked up at her finally. "Because I saw her face the night she realized no one could protect her anymore. And I realized that you've been standing on your own this whole time, and we never once thanked you for it." Aisha didn't speak. She couldn't trust her voice just yet. He rose slowly, placing a hand on the edge of her desk. "We can't undo what's been done, but I wanted you to hear it from me. I see you, Aisha, and I'm proud of you." After he left, she sat in the stillness, letting the words settle. They didn't erase anything. They didn't rebuild what had been damaged, but they mattered. That evening, Aisha went for a walk. The air was warm, heavy with the scent of summer flowers blooming along the sidewalks. She walked without direction, letting her feet decide the route, the sound of her breath syncing with the rhythm of her steps. As she passed a row of parked cars on a quiet residential street, she paused in front of a sleek gray sedan. Not new, not flashy, but solid. Clean lines, reliable make. A for sale sign sat on the windshield. She took out her phone and snapped a picture. The next morning, she called the number. The owner was kind, informative, and after a short test drive and inspection, the car was hers. Paid in full, no financing, no debt. She parked it at the far end of the driveway, the same spot where her red car had once stood, gleaming like a badge of hard-won freedom. But this car felt different. It didn't need to prove anything. It didn't scream accomplishment. It was hers because she chose it. Not to show off, not to reclaim anything, but because she wanted it. Inside the house, Tamira watched her through the window, her face unreadable. She hadn't spoken to Aisha since that day on the porch. No apology, no gratitude, only silence. But that silence no longer felt like a victory for Tamira. It felt like isolation. Aisha noticed the way her sister moved through the house now. Quieter, less entitled. Her confidence was no longer effortless. It was defensive, cautious. She had taken a part-time job at a retail store while trying to patch things with her bank and salvage her credit. Her social media had gone dark. Her old friends had drifted. The consequences were no longer theoretical. Aisha didn't gloat. She didn't mock. She simply lived. She prepared her meals. She kept her door closed. She responded to kindness with warmth and ignored the rest. Her mother began knocking before entering now. She asked questions about Aisha's day with genuine curiosity. She listened when Aisha answered. The change was subtle but real. One Sunday afternoon, Aisha returned from the grocery store and found her mother in the kitchen, chopping vegetables. "I thought I'd make your favorite today," she said, not turning around. Aisha placed the bags on the counter. "Gumbo?" Her mother nodded. "Haven't made it in a while." Aisha unpacked quietly, pulling out spices and setting them near the stove. For a while, they worked in tandem. No lectures, no tension, just the rhythm of food being prepared and history being sifted through, without needing to be spoken aloud. As the pot simmered, her mother wiped her hands on a towel and turned to her. "You know," she said softly, "I used to tell myself that showing love meant making sure nobody got hurt. That if I could protect Tamira from the world, she'd grow up happy. But I forgot that sometimes love means letting people feel the burn." Aisha stirred the pot and said nothing. I didn't protect you the same way, her mother continued, because you didn't seem to need it. But I was wrong. You needed something too. You needed to be believed, supported. Asha looked at her mother then, not with anger, but with clarity. I needed to be respected. Her mother nodded. Yes, that too. Dinner that night was the first time in years they all sat together without pretense. It wasn't warm, it wasn't comfortable, but it was real. No one tried to smooth things over. No one asked Aisha to let it go. They simply ate. Afterward, as Aisha carried her plate to the sink, Tamira approached. She didn't speak at first. She just stood there, eyes downcast, fingers gripping the hem of her shirt. I don't know how to say sorry and mean it, she said finally. Aisha placed the plate in the sink. Then don't say anything. Tamira looked up, startled. Not yet, Asha added. You'll know when the time's right. Tamira nodded. It wasn't closure, but it was the beginning of a different kind of truth. Later that night, Aisha lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The house was quiet again, but no longer with the suffocating hush of avoidance. It was the quiet that follows reckoning. She closed her eyes, her breath steady. For the first time, the weight she had carried for years, of being overlooked, overburdened, underestimated, began to lift. She didn't need anyone to validate her choices. She had chosen herself, and in doing so, she had finally stepped into the life she had built, not just with hard work, but with courage. The kind of life where peace wasn't a reward given by others, but a boundary she made and kept for herself. A new path, and she was walking it alone, but no longer lonely. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Check out the other videos on the channel for more powerful stories like this one. And if this one moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it.